ISKCON GBC Beauty Church of Prabhupada Ki
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Him.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to those who Shiva and Shiva. All glories to Shiva. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Naranam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Nashtaneshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki.
So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 14. The chapter is entitled The Disappearance of Krishna, and it is verse number 12, I believe. Devotees will have phone. We read the verse, right? Or do we? Should I?
Yeah.
Lower. Close us.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Shivai Shodayantamadityam Abhirot Yanalanana Mamanga Sarameyoyam Abhire Bhat Yabhiruva Abhire Bhat Yabhiruva Shivai Shodayantam Adityam Abhirot Yanalanana Mamanga Sharameyoyam Abhire Bhat Yabhiruvat Abhire Bhat Yabhiruvat Shivai Shodayantam Adityam Abhirot Yanalanana Mamanga Sarameyoyam Abhire Bhat Yabhiruvat
Shivai Shodantamadityam
Abhiratyanalana
Mamanga Sarameyoyam Abhire Bhati Abhiruvat
Shivai Shodantamadityam
Abhiratyanalana
Mamanga Sarameyoyam
Abhiratyaviruvat Shivai Shodantamadityam Abhiratyanalana Amanga Sarameyoyam Abhiratyaviruvat Biharvan, Biharvan. Shivaishodyam Tamadityam Mamanga Saradeyoyam
Shiva,
Shiva,
Jackal,
Jackal,
Isha, this, Udyantam, rising, Adityam, unto the sun, Abhi, towards, Rauti, crying, Anala, fire, Ananda, face, Mam, unto me, Anga, Obhima, Sarameya, dog, Ayam, this, Abhirebhati, barks towards, Abhiruvat, without fear. Translation of purple by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Just see, O Bhima, how the she-jackal cries at the rising sun and vomits fire, and how the dog barks at me fearlessly. Please repeat. Just see, O Bhima, how the she-jackal cries at the rising sun and vomits fire, and how the dog barks at me fearlessly. Purport. There are some bad omens indicating something undesirable in the near future. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Chakshura-militam yena tasmai Mukam karoti vachalam pandum rangayate girim Kripatamaham bandhashi gurim. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakti. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I'd like to beg the blessings of the devotees before I speak. Maharaj, Ananda, and senior devotees. That I can speak something that is beneficial for all and in line with Guru Sadhu and Shastra. So, we're reading in these verses about omens, bad omens. So, Yudhishthira Maharaj is seeing in nature, in his environment, that there are a lot of negative things going on. So, there's a science, a Vedic science called omenology. So you can read books. I wouldn't recommend necessarily that you read books on it, but you can read books on omenology, which describes, growing up in India or in Indian families, my parents were always speaking about different omens. If a black cat crosses your path, then you can't go that way, you have to turn, you have to go somewhere else. If your left eye is flickering, this is a bad omen for a man. If the right eye is flickering, it's a good omen. And for ladies, it's the other way around. Right? So, like that, there were so many different omens that my parents would always speak about. You begin to believe in them, but this is a Vedic science. It's a Vedic science. It's there. And it's true. And so this is what Yudhishthira Maharaj here is referring to. He's seeing all of these omens, all of these bearers of misfortune. And it's indicating that something very bad is happening. Now, of course, we know from the title of the chapter what is happening here. It's the disappearance of Lord Krishna. So Krishna, of course, he's on the planet for 125 years, and when the Lord comes onto the planet, it's such an auspicious period for the planet. And his disappearance, his leaving the planet, of course when he leaves then he goes on to another planet. He's constantly going from one planet to another in the material universe. For the devotees who then become bereft of his association, it's such a painful experience. So the Pandavas were very dear to Krishna, and Krishna was very dear to the Pandavas. They had a lot of association, and so when Krishna was leaving, Krishna had seen them through all of the trials and tribulations that they had been through. He had stuck by them, he had supported them. Without Krishna's presence and intervention on so many occasions, the Pandavas would never have won the Battle of Kurukshetra. He was always sticking by them, supporting them, and protecting them in so many ways. When at the end of the 18-day war in Kurukshetra, when Krishna and Arjuna got off the chariot of Arjuna, then the chariot was just destroyed to pieces. Arrows, fire, everything just destroyed the chariot because Krishna was protecting that chariot. So many situations, we can talk about that, but I wanted to focus on something a little different today. But this, so Yudhishthira Maharaj, Bhima, they're seeing these omens, and at the end, Yudhishthira says, could it be all of these omens coming together, and it's such an intense, so many bad omens. There's only one thing that all of these omens are indicating. There's only one possibility. There's only one eventuality here, and that is that Krishna is leaving the planet. Krishna's left the planet. And this is so painful. So painful. And so that's what the Bhagavatam says in the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto. It says, Krishna sudhama bhagate dharma jnana vidisaha kalau nashta drisham mesha purana ko gunodita. That when Krishna leaves the planet, then it's covered by darkness. Covered by darkness. But there's one saving grace, or there's one thing which sheds light into this very dark material world, this very dark material realm, and that is the Bhagavatam, Purana. That is as brilliant as the sun, so it shines light into this very dark age, and that's why we take shelter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Krishna's leaving the world is a very inauspicious thing. And so what are we left with? We're left with Kali Yuga. So when Krishna leaves, that is the official beginning of Kali Yuga. So of course they say the Sandhyas, and it's a 5,000 year Sandhya, the ending of Dwapara Yuga, and the beginning of Kali Yuga. And so Kali Yuga is only really just beginning. And that's scary. That's scary. So we've got another 427,000 years of Kali Yuga. And I'm just seeing over the past 20 years how things have degraded so immensely, so significantly. They say in the 1960s, the biggest problems in schools were running around the corridor, children sticking chewing gum under the table, and talking during class, disturbing the teacher. Those are the 3 main problems in schools in Kali Yuga, in the 60s. Nowadays, just 50, 60 years later, the biggest problems are teenage pregnancy, gun crime, and we're in America, so gun crime. I mean, every week it seems, there's another shooting in a school. Gun crime and drug and alcohol abuse. And this is teenagers, 15, 16-year-olds. And it's getting younger and younger. So I dread to think what is going to happen in the next 20 years, the next 30 years. That I'm alive and trying to preach and do something. It's scary. It's scary. And what kind of world are devotees bringing their children into? what kind of an environment are they going to be growing up in. It's Harinarayan here is homeschooled, just like Prabhu homeschooled his children. Harinarayan is homeschooled, and that gives a real protective bubble from all of the terrible influences which are there in schools today, and just the atmosphere, the environment. You just have to walk down the street and you see so many unsavory things. So we're left with Kali Yuga. Once there was a man, a Brahmana, and he was rushing to see Yudhishthira Maharaj, and he was very disturbed. But Bhima was the gatekeeper for Yudhishthira Maharaj's chambers, and he stopped the Brahmana. He said, "You cannot go any further. You're not allowed to see Yudhishthira Maharaj. It's not just like that." So the Brahmana said, "But I really have to see the king. I'm very disturbed. I've just seen some terrible things and I need answers. I need to understand what is happening." So Bhima says, "Ask me, I can help you. I can help you out." So, but Yudhishthira Maharaj, he's not to be disturbed. You can't just go and see him just like that. So the Brahmana said, "I've seen 4 things in my environment which I'm just baffled by. I cannot understand what's happening, and I want to understand what it all means. What is happening here?" So the first thing the Brahmana saw was that so there was a field and there's a fence around the field. And he saw imperceptibly, no one was moving the fence, but the fence was moving in closer and closer. And the field was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And no one was moving the fence, it was just happening by itself. And he thought, what is happening? How is this happening? How is this possible? Second thing he saw was that an individual had a jug of water. And it was full. And he had 4 cups. And he poured the jug into each of the 4 cups. And the jug was empty. And the cups were full. Then he took those 4 cups, he put them back into the jug, and the jug was now only half. So the jug began by being full, poured the water in, poured it back into the jug's now half full. How does that make any sense? He didn't spill any water. Why? How? The third thing he saw is that there was a man and he was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. So I always remember the cobbler, Narada the cobbler. But this is a different story. So he's threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. And the elephant is going through, but then the tail gets stuck. The tail gets stuck. Everything else goes through the eye of the needle, but the tail gets stuck. And then the fourth thing he saw was that there was a boulder in the middle of the road, a huge boulder. And people, men, huge strong men, 10, 20 of them, were trying to push this boulder away, out of the way, to make way for cars to go through. But no one was able to do it. No matter how much strength, how much effort and force they put in, the boulder was immovable. And then a sadhu came. Took his chadra. This is why I call it the chadra. There was a thread on his chadra, and he just used the thread, and the boulder was removed. This huge boulder was just removed just by the thread of the chadra, the sadhu. So the Brahmana said to Bhima, "I'm confused. What is happening here? What is happening under the reign of King Yudhishthira? I want to know what's going on here. I demand answers. And I'm a citizen, Praja. It's the king's duty to take care of the citizens and to see to their needs." So then Bhima was just looking at the Brahmana and saying, "Hey, I can't answer these questions. This is not my qualification. Okay, you can go and see Yudhishthira Maharaj." So then The Brahmana went in, he spoke to Yudhishthira Maharaj, an hour later he came out and he was walking away. And Bhima said, hey, hold on. What did you discuss? I also want to know the answers. I want to know what is happening. What did Yudhishthira Maharaj say? So the Brahmana said that the discussion was very satisfying. I got some answers. Yudhishthira Maharaj explained that the fence was moving in. He said that these are all symptoms of Kali Yuga. The fence was moving in, closer and closer and closer. Why? This is a sign of the lack of protection in this age. The leaders who are meant to protect those under them do not protect. They are not doing their duty. They exploit the people under them, rather than give them protection. Once there was a man, he was the boss of a company, and one day he drove in with a brand new Tesla. Everyone's talking about Teslas these days. He drove in with a brand spanking new Tesla, top of the range. He ordered it a year ago and it just arrived, because these days semiconductor parts and so on, it's taking a long time. But he drove in with this brand new Tesla, and everyone was watching, thinking, "Wow, what a beautiful car, amazing!" And all of his employees are just watching on in awe. So the boss gets out of his car, and all the employees are there, morning, and he says to them, "If you all work twice as hard, work overtime, if you work weekends, you work extra hard, then next year I'll be able to get a Porsche."
Motivation.
So it's all about me. All about me. Leaders are very selfish. Rather than sharing what they have with the people under them. A good leader, a good king, he will make sure that those under him are well taken care of. So I was in Dubai recently, and we were staying. I was with my Guru Maharaj, Biharvan Maharaj. We were doing some preaching there. Maharaj was doing the preaching, I was assisting, and we were in a mansion. It was a huge house, and they had multiple servants. And a servant for washing the clothes, and a servant for cleaning, and a servant for cooking, and a servant for serving, and a driver, and so on. It was opulent. Let's put it like that. And they're devotees. And I just thought they really took very good care of the servants. Whatever food they were eating, they made sure that there was enough for the servants, and they had nice quarters to stay in. And they would make sure that the servants were taken care of. And this is how things work. This is the correct behavior. The servants aren't just some lowly people who just do whatever you want them to do, and you chastise them when they're not doing the right thing. They're taken care of. So this is Kali Yuga. People are very exploitative. The second thing was a jug of water. So what does this all mean? You pour the jug, the glasses are full, you pour them back, the jug's now half empty. Yudhishthira Maharaj explained that this is all a sign of Kali Yuga in the sense that people are very ungrateful. You give. The people that you're giving to, they don't get that. Or if they do, they give back a fraction. People are not conscious of what you've done for them. People are the reciprocation is very limited in Kali Yuga. So they say that you should remember everything good that others have done for you, but forget everything bad that others have done. And you should remember everything bad that you've done for others, but forget everything good you've done. But rather it's the other way around. Everything in Kali Yuga is upside down. It's turned on its head. It's exactly as it shouldn't be. So people are ungrateful. In Sanskrit, the word for gratitude is kritagya. Kritagya. Gya means to know. Krita means to do. To be conscious of what someone else has done for you. To be conscious of what someone else has done for you. Kritagya. Gya means to know. Krita is to do. Rather, we're very conscious of what we've done for others. We always remember that. But when someone else does something for us, then it's, yeah, that's expected. That's as it should be. You know, yeah, it should be more actually. They were insufficient in their service to me. So like that. But gratitude is the nature of a Vaishnava. It's the quality of a Vaishnava. That he remembers everything that others have done for him, feels great gratitude for it, and does his best to reciprocate with what others have done. But this is Kali Yuga. The children these days, the parents, especially the mother, give so much to the child, so much effort, energy. I can see my own parents, they put in so much love and affection and care and sacrifice to bring me up. How much, and I ask myself sometimes, how much am I conscious and grateful for everything that they've done for me? It's an unrepayable debt, actually. You know, it's an unrepayable debt. And then what the spiritual master does for the disciple, what Srila Prabhupada has done for us, what the spiritual master has done for us, it's immense. It's given us the greatest gift. And how much am I able to repay him? So in the Bhagavatam 4th canto, I forget the exact verse, but it's a nice verse. It says that it's a duty of the disciple to attempt to repay the spiritual master. But in doing so, he's a laughing stock, Vinod Patram. Because he can never repay what the spiritual master has given. What the spiritual master is giving is invaluable. He's giving him life, real life. So in trying to do so, he's a Vinod Patram, he's a laughing stock, Prabhupada says. But still, he should try. Still, it's his duty to try. And that attempt is appreciated. That attempt is essential. So, gratitude. And this is an indicator of the ingratitude which we see in society. Third thing, he saw someone threading an elephant through the eye of a needle, but the tail was stuck. What does this all mean? Yudhishthira explained that this is all an indication that in Kali Yuga, the big timers, the criminals, the real bad guys, they all get through. They all escape. You know, the real fraudsters, the criminals, you know, but the small timers, you know, the guys who do little things, relatively speaking, you know, they get away. Hitler said, Goebbels, no, Hitler's propaganda minister, his name was Joseph Goebbels in the 40s. And his philosophy was, if you want to tell a lie, tell a big lie. Because then no one will believe that you're lying so big. And it will get through. People will believe you. If you tell little lies and people analyze, and they think, is that true? But if you tell a big lie, he's not going to lie about that, you know. So, my experience is, you know, distributing books, you know, like in England, there's so much. I mean, I don't have so much experience in America. I've done some book distribution here, but not a lot. But in England, there's so many things going on the streets, unsavory things. You know, it's things you don't even want to think about or speak about. And then, you know, and the police does a patrol around the city centre. And all of these things are very obviously going on, you know, drugs and, you know, abuse of all sorts of varieties. So many things are going on, and the police just ignores it all. And then you've got a guy who's driving his bike down a pedestrianised area, and the police stop him and they give him a fine and chastise him and so on. Or the poor Hare Krishna guy is distributing a few books, you know, trying to share some yoga meditation, or, you know, that's how we present it, you know. And then the police gets on his case, you know, and So in Kali Yuga, the big timers, the real criminals, they get away scot-free, we say in England. They get away scot-free. But the small-time criminals, you know, or the guys who aren't really doing anything so bad, they're the ones that get punished. So that's Kali Yuga. And then the fourth thing, what was the fourth thing? The huge boulder in the road. No one can move it. But then a sadhu comes and moves it with his thread. What does this all mean? So there's a verse which says, 12.351, Kaler dosha nidhi rajan asti eko mahantuna kirtanadam krishnasya mukta sangha paramvaje. So it says this Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. Nothing but faults. So many problems as we've just discussed. It's a huge boulder, a huge clump of faults. But there's one thing in this Kali Yuga which is the saving grace. The one thing which brings light into this age. The one thing which can save us from this Kali Yuga. And that is seemingly very simple, seemingly very insignificant, just like the thread of the sadhu's chadar. But with this one very small, seemingly insignificant thing, the huge boulder of faults of Kali Yuga can be finished, removed, taken away. And that is a holy name. Asti eko mahan guna kirtanad eva krishnasya. Krishna Kirtan. Krishna Kirtan is the one saving grace. Mukta Sangha Paramvrajya is the means for liberation in this Kali Yuga. So Yudhishthira Maharaj explained this to the Brahmana explained it to Bhima, and everyone was satisfied, very, very happy. So this chanting of the holy names is very essential. And it relates to this because what I was meditating on when I looked at the verse was that there is, in chanting, see, Krishna is leaving in this chapter. And the Pandavas, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna especially, they will feel separation from Krishna. And this is the nature of Krishna's pastimes actually. He comes and he goes. So this is the end of his earthly pastimes on this earth planet, 125 years. But actually, on a daily basis, Krishna is constantly coming and going. So Krishna rises in the morning. We have a little book which describes Krishna's pastimes over the course of a day, over the course of 24 hours. But he rises in the morning, he goes down to milk the cows, then he bathes and dresses, or is dressed even, and then he has some prasad, and that's between 6 and 8:24 in the morning. And then from 8:24 to 10:48, it's the pastime of him kind of finishing breakfast, and then getting ready to go, getting all the cows together, all the cow boys together, and then the whole pastime of him actually leaving. Because his parents, Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda Devi especially, don't want him to go. And they're feeling this deep separation that Krishna is going to leave. He's going to leave us. And if you read Brihad Bhagavatamrita, for example, it describes in intricate detail the feelings and the emotions of Yashodamai, as well as others, as Krishna's leaving. And he goes, and then she calls him back. No, come back. You know, I have to make sure your hair are in place. You know, and are you going to be okay? And then he goes and he says, oh, make sure the thorns, you know, there's thorns on the road, you know, in the forest, and hard stones. Balaram, make sure you take care of Krishna. And then he goes, and then she calls him. So this whole thing takes a long time. He's leaving because she's feeling the pangs of separation, even before he's left. Because why? Not because he's going to leave, not because he's leaving the planet, but because he's leaving for the day. And then the coward boys have him. They have his association for some time. They go in the forest, they play, they jump around, they joke, they play in the water, they play with the cows, they play all sorts of games. So the coward boys then feel union with Krishna. They feel some connection with Krishna. And that's beautiful. They're very happy because they have union. Whereas Mother Yashoda, the parents, they're feeling separation. But then during the day, Krishna often slips away and goes to Radhakund to meet the gopis. And then they have union. And the coward boys feel separation. And then Krishna comes back to the coward boys, and then they feel union. And then it's time to go home. And then eventually they get home, and Mother Yashoda is so blissful to see Krishna again. So happy, it feels like lifetimes. We were singing this morning, Yugayatam Nimishena Chakshusha Prakashayatam. That a moment feels like 12 years or more. I've never understood or never read anywhere why it says 12 years or more. Marriage, have you ever 12?
It's one of the very time things, you know.
Time periods, 12 years, yeah. So it says, a moment feels like 12 years or more in separation from you. So this is actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's in the mood of a gopi. And this is what the gopis feel. They have the most intense feeling of separation because they have the most attachment. So you can only feel separation if you have some attachment to something or someone. So when Krishna returns back to Vrindavan, back to his home, Nandagram, then Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, the parents, are so happy to see him again. But the coward boys, most of them have to go home. So then they feel separation. And like that, Krishna's pastimes go on. And it's constant separation. Even when they're with Krishna, they have this fear of impending separation. Soon he will leave us again. So like that, the separation is a constant factor. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually Madhavendra Puri. He is repeating this verse. It's Antya-lila or Madhya-lila? 4:197. It says, Ai dina dayadra nath hai mathura nath kudava lokashya. Hridayam twadda loka kataram daita brahmati kim karomi ham. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is feeling this deep separation from Krishna, and he's in the mood of a gopi. He's saying that Shri Gauri Bhai Bhakti Bihari ki jai. So he's feeling this deep separation, Madhavendra Puri, and he's saying my heart is like it's being pierced, it's being cut in this separation. He's saying Mathura Nath. Why is Madhavendra Puri saying Mathura Nath? He's in Vrindavan. He's in Vrindavan. And Krishna's far, far away in Mathura. Actually, Mathura is not that far in one sense. But in another sense, if you're an inch away from Krishna, then it's far enough. So he's saying, oh Mathura Nath, you're the king of that far distant land of Mathura. You're not with us here in Vrindavan. You're in that far, far, far away place of Mathura. What do we do without you? We're dying without you. It feels like my heart is being pierced, is being cut without your association. Kim karomi ham, what should I do? What should I do in the separation? What do I do? What do you expect me to do? How do you expect me to live in separation of you? So this is Madhavendra Puri's feeling, this is his emotion, this is his experience. Kaviraj Goswami says that this verse is like sandalwood. You keep chanting it, it's just like you keep rubbing sandalwood, and you get wonderful things. A beautiful aroma comes and it rubs off. So in the same way, you keep chanting this verse, you keep meditating on this verse, and it rubs off. It brings wonderful experiences. So separation is something which is key to our Krishna consciousness development. We have to become attached to Krishna, and as we become more attached to Krishna, we can feel more separation. How do we become more attached to Krishna? We have to hear about his pastimes. We have to read Bhagavatam, we have to read Bhagavad Gita, we have to read the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and we have to hear about Krishna. We have to hear about the person whose names that we're chanting. And that's why we're doing a little tour around America. We started the Sadhu Sangha Festival last week in Spanish Fork, and we're distributing a set of books by His Holiness Shivam Swami called Naval Raja Mahima. It is replete with pastimes of Krishna. Krishna's pastimes are unlimited. Once Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was publishing a newspaper. It was a daily newspaper. It was called Nadia Prakash, I believe. I'm not entirely sure on the title, but basically it was a newspaper. It was a broadsheet, and it was 4 pages. And on the outside, it had all of the normal day-to-day news, the politics and the economics and the sports, if they had sports then. I guess they did. Anyway, on the outside, it had all of these things, so that the normal people would be attracted and they would buy the newspaper. And then on the inside, it was full of the pastimes of Krishna. And it was beautiful. So then they were publishing daily. And then one devotee, he asked Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but won't we run out of things to talk about? If it's daily, what will we write about on a daily basis? You know, isn't it too much? Isn't it an over endeavour? And we'll run out of things to say. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that Krishna's pastimes are unlimited. Forget every day, every minute we could publish a newspaper. It's an unlimited pastime of Krishna. It's no end. Because constantly, all the time, Krishna's performing newer and newer pastimes. Navanavaya. There's no end. And it's always something new. There's always something new. Krishna's pastimes are never stayed, never stale. You know, they say that in the spiritual world, you know, we know 7 primary colours. But in the spiritual world, there's a new colour produced daily for the pleasure of Radha. Imagine, a new colour produced daily. We're so limited in this material world. There's unlimited things going on there. And we can tap into a small fraction of those pastimes. So in this set of books, there's 1,000 pastimes of Krishna. Beautiful, wonderful pastimes of Krishna, which give joy to the heart. And like that, as we read and hear about Krishna, then Krishna becomes more and more of a person in our hearts and minds. He is a person. But how much do we relate to him as a person, as an actual person? If you compare it to your nearest and dearest, your spouse, your children, they're people, and you relate to them as people. How much do we relate to Krishna as a person? Thinking, feeling, willing person. So when we read about Krishna, we hear about Krishna, we become more and more personal in our interactions, in our thoughts, and in our chanting, and our meditations of Krishna. And in that way, we develop more and more attraction towards him. We develop more and more attachment to him. And then the separation that the Pandavas are feeling here in this chapter, that becomes more and more of a reality. Of course, these are very high topics in one sense. It's something that, however, it's something that everyone can cultivate, whatever stage they're on in their spiritual lives. A key aspect of that cultivation, Prabhupada has given us the process of devotional service is a perfect process. There's the aspect of our own internal development, And the morning program, starting from Samsara Dava, Tulsi Puja, Nashimi Day of Prayers, Japa, Prabhupada Guru Puja, the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, all of these things focus in on our own personal development of Krishna consciousness, our inner development, and this is when we really try and cultivate this meditation on Krishna, his name, form, qualities and pastimes, his abode, his associates, and then the rest of the day we engage in practical devotional service using whatever skills and abilities we have in the service, in the mission of Srila Prabhupada. And in that way, it's a very wholesome process that we've been given to develop our Krishna consciousness and to really experience something in Krishna consciousness. Very often, after some time, devotional service becomes mechanical. We sit down, we chant japa, but the mind is running from one place to another. How much are we actually hearing the holy name? I always ask devotees and I ask myself, how many mantras did you hear in the last round? How much are we actually hearing the holy name and absorbed only in the holy name and nothing else? Because the holy name is the saving grace. So the Bhagavatam brings light, Purana and the holy name is the saving grace. Kirtana Deva Krishnasya. So these, it's non-different. The holy name is non-different to Krishna, the Bhagavatam is non-different to Krishna. But ultimately these two things, chanting the holy names and hearing about Krishna, Bhagavatam and other related scriptures are really our saving grace, they're our shelter. And in our lives we have to make sure that on a daily basis we're genuinely taking shelter of these two things, and it has to be daily. If we don't do it daily, we find that our connection is weakened. And when we do it daily, then naturally a taste comes. You know, there is taste here. This is real taste. Everything else is a facsimile, is a watered down version. There's so much potential or the mirage, the illusion of taste in so many other places, but this is real taste. And if we're experiencing that taste in chanting and hearing about Krishna, then we're on the right path. And if we're not, then we have to get onto that path. And that only comes from regulated practice. Svaili sadhana bhakti. By regulated practice, everything else naturally comes. I'll stop, and if there's any comments, corrections, questions, please. Marty?
Bhima is called Anga. Why is that?
I'm not sure. Sorry.
What was Karna?
Karna is Anga.
They made him.
Karna is Anga.
Yeah, they made him the king of Anga.
Correct. Yeah. So Karna is Anga. Bhima, I never heard.
Maybe because his
Limbs are very strong. But Bhima is also called Anga Mara.
Well, said right now. No.
I guess, yeah, sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Anga, yes.
Okay, that was my first one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Karna was Angaraj.
Yeah.
B.
Ganga also kind of means a part, right?
Yes, a part.
A part.
A limb, a part.
Yeah, so maybe that's why my brother.
He's one of the five brothers.
You were talking about what is it? You know how the police pick out certain people, and Berkeley was Berkeley, California, San Francisco was very famous for being extreme radical environment, everything else, the whole school there. Yeah. So one of their mottos was capitalism is the big thieves arrest the little thieves. There's no capitalism. Big thieves arrest the little thieves.
Yes.
So that was the
talking of thieves, big thieves and little thieves.
Yeah.
I think it was Alexander the Great. There was a thief that was arrested and brought to Alexander the Great for justice. And the thief said, "You're a big thief, you steal country, I'm a little thief, what's the difference?" And Alexander appreciated that, and let him go.
Yes.
Don't do it.
Don't do, yeah, they got this bumper sticker these days that says, "Don't steal. The government hates competition."
Yeah.
Yeah. What a world to live in, right? And when I see the way the world's going, the trends, I just want to get out. I mean, it's an impetus to want to get out of here.
But it creates opportunity for preaching too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because then people see, hey, it was maybe about maybe 7 years ago, 11 years ago. It was one of the middle European countries. You know, they got through all these problems and having problems. They interviewed one of their leaders, and he said, "Yeah, we went through like Roman occupation, and that didn't work. Then we went through the fascists who took us over, that didn't work. And now we got through capitalism, that didn't work. Now we're coming out into this capitalist thing and trying to follow America, that hasn't worked." And he said, "What about Hare Krishna?" He said that. Hare Krishna. But it's like, after so many years, now it's my son, the other devotees too, we're starting to be accepted as basically the same as like the Mormons. Oh yeah, you have your centers, you have your churches, I know people. Oh, okay, yeah. And then, oh, you're a Mormon? Oh, Hare Krishna. See, everybody kind of knows everybody's standards, and you start professionally associating. And the basis of your professional occupation, which is chapter 3, Prabhupada says, Bhagavad Gita, you start to appreciate this people and start to learn, learn very, very deeply about the culture, so that the preaching in that perspective may be changing, not so much evangelical preaching on the streets and stuff. We went here with Ananda right up to the Mormon Center, and I suggested that they got an appointment. There's a Mormon center right next to the campus. It was the first college preaching center. In the beginning, it was very formal, receiving us, and after a while, I began to realize these are Sankirtan guys like me, and they're sincere. So he started talking all about his distance, their internal stuff. He said, "Of course, you know that man-to-man preaching on the street, door-to-door, is the lowest level." "Oh yeah, we know that." What's the higher? And basically, their higher level was basically like Bhakti Vriksha, that they had programs and people who know people to encourage. They bring their friends and so on like that. Yeah. So the atmosphere seems to be very, very much now. We're in South America. We're around going, yeah, we're accepted as, we made the test, and so okay, so what should I do then? And so other things starting to fall apart, and people are looking, for new solutions.
Yes.
And some of them will become even more bestial, and others will become. It's almost like there's this polarization.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's something I definitely observed, this polarization. Some people are going deeper and deeper into materialism and sense gratification. Sometimes you wonder how much deeper can you go, and then you see another trend. And it's just like, you can't even imagine, like, how do they think of thinking something?
You can go all the way to becoming a bacteria.
Yeah. I mean, the way people walk, talk, dress.
Oh gosh.
In schools you're not allowed to have male and female toilets. You have to have unisex because you can't impose a gender on people.
Yeah.
Where are we going? It's a crazy world we're living in. It's going to get crazier. But yeah, polarization.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That reminds me of like the boulder, just people will keep pushing more for material, and it will just be like, you're just like hitting a wall. But then if you just become with the saving grace. I was going to ask, do you have this on audiobook? Because this book, you should make an audiobook. People will be able to listen.
We've discussed it, and there's a devotee who said he wants to sponsor the production of an audiobook. But Shiva Raj said he would, he wants to make sure that it's exactly as he wants it to be. And right now he's writing, so it takes too much effort to get into overseeing the production of an audio book.
And
Maybe in
the,
the future.
yeah, the other thing I was going to say is, I liked your point about you can't have separation without union. And I heard that recently in a class, like he was kind of saying, like, would you rather see Krishna in person or just feel him in your heart? But anyway, he was making the point, like, you can't actually have separation without having seen Krishna first, kind of thing. And just like I was meditating, like so many people are attached to hearing pastimes of mundane people. And like people become obsessed, like children become obsessed with Harry Potter, and you know they'll watch or listen and read over and over the pastimes of Harry Potter. But like if we just give them Krishna and these wonderful pastimes, they'll become attached to that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the question. Just on this point, actually, Srimati Radharani becomes attached to Krishna even before seeing him. She hears about it. She hears about it. She hears about this wonderful blue boy who's just so amazing, and just by hearing about him, she's just mesmerized. And then Vishaka paints a picture of this Krishna. Then she sees this picture, and then she becomes even more mesmerized. And then there's a third thing. There's three things. I forget the third. But there's three things which Radharani, she hears about him, she sees a picture of him, and then there's a third. And through that, she feels like she has become attached to three different people. But actually, all three is that one, Krishna. So, yeah, that attachment comes through union, but at least with separation, no one can take Krishna away from you, because Krishna can't take. No one can take the Krishna away from you in your heart. Krishna may come and he may go. That separation, union, that constant thing may be there, but when he's in your heart and you're cultivating your relationship with him in your heart, no one can take that away. And so actually in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, separation is superior. The experience of separation is superior to the experience of union. And the Acharyas say how that works, you can only really know if you experience it. Because the separation is bittersweet. It's bittersweet. It's like poison and nectar at the same time.
It's like hot sugar candy, right?
Right.
It's so sweet you can't stop chewing. It's so hot it's burning.
Right.
It's a definition of chutney. Yeah, a good chutney is so hot you can't stand it. It's so sweet you can't resist it.
Right. And that experience, because if it was just union all the time,
Yeah.
then they say familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah.
Right? And it gets stayed, it gets a little, So Krishna is dynamic. There's always something different. There's always something new, something fresh. Change, He doesn't like things being static. It's always new. Things are always different, Every day is different. The pastimes overall, there may be a pattern in the pastimes. But there's, Krishna has agents in charge who are making sure that things are always a little different. There's always a twist. There's always something which happens, which, brings that variety. They say variety is a spice of life. So Krishna loves variety. He's Akhila Rasamrita Murti. So this is the way Krishna enjoys.
I have a question, because I've heard this, but I don't know anything about this at all. That he's doing pastimes, like, he's always somewhere doing his pastimes in the material universe even, and different planets, different universes. But are they different pastimes? Are they same pastimes? Are they do they have a totally different thing going on?
So it's like in the Bhagavatam, it describes the pastime of Varahadev is described in, there's a Rakta, reddish, and then Sweta Varaha, which is whitish. And it's two different pastimes either in two different universes, or in two different yugas. Yugas? Yeah, but it's essentially the same pastime, but there's always differences. There's always differences. It's described in the Puranas how Nrsingadev's pastime, Prahlad Maharaj, there's always differences. So like that, essentially, you could summarize the pastimes, and there's books which kind of summarize Krishna's pastimes overall over the course of a day, over the course of his lifetime. He spends the first 16 years in Vrindavan, then he goes to Mathura for 25 years, and then he goes to Dwarka, like that. You know, there's a pattern in his pastime, so there's an overall shell, but then within that there's always some variety, there's always change.
Even when you said that, it reminded me, I went on a South Indian tour with, like, it was a Nrsingadev tour, and we were hearing, like, more details about Nrsingadev, and I remember one of the details was that he's sad he didn't have a mother, because he was born from a pillar, and one of the mothers, and he became, like, all these, like, details.
Right. Our scriptures are full of beautiful details, insights, and it's mind. You can be mining all your life, it's just continuous. There's so much nectar to be mined and meditated on, and they bring wonderful experience. So it's it's very beautiful. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for having us here. I didn't really introduce myself at the beginning. My name is Ananda Chaitanya Das.
We will.
I'm from London. I live in Hungary, in Budapest. I'm a disciple of Shivaram Swami, and I distribute books and some aspects of management in the temple in Budapest, and the Brahmacharya ashram, and so on. And the three of us, Ryan Pru, Lucas Pru, and myself, we're just doing a little tour around America. We started at South December Festival, heading to Vancouver, and then we go down the west coast.
Come to Houston.
Houston.
Yeah, you should come to Houston.
You live in Houston?
Yes, big temple. They'll buy lots of stuff.
I went to Houston at the temple opening in 2014. I was at the temple opening in Houston in 2014.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Good job.
Neela Madhav.
Yeah, you have to come back and see
Beautiful,
them.
beautiful temple. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Prabhupada ki, Jai Gopal. Ananda Chaitanya Prabhu ki.
You know, I always thought that, when it comes to numbers, like, 12 years or more, stuff like that,